Fingers scraped against wet stone. Both knees were bleeding. The gap in the rock was barely wide enough for a grown man to pass through sideways, and she was 8 months pregnant. She pressed herself flat against the surface and pushed. Something in her hip ground hard against the edge. She didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Behind her, boots on loose gravel. Getting closer. She pushed harder. Her name was Maya Reeves. 26 years old. 8 months along and terrified. Alone on a mountain trail with no cell signal and a stranger who had been following her for the last half hour. She got one shoulder through, then the other. Then, inch by inch, her belly cleared the gap while the rock pressed in from both sides. What she found on the other side, no one who later heard this story could believe. Stay right with me on this one. Maya Reeves had been hiking the Clingmans Ridge Trail every Saturday morning for 3 months. Not because she loved the mountains, though she did. Because it was the 1 hour of the week where she could stop thinking. She was a labor and delivery nurse at St. Mary's Hospital in Knoxville. She spent her shifts helping other women bring babies into the world. She drove home afterward to a quiet apartment and sat with her own pregnancy in silence. The pregnancy had not been planned. The marriage had started unraveling before she even found out. When she was 4 months along, her husband Daniel packed 2 bags. Not 1, 2. Put them in the back of his truck and drove away without leaving a note. His phone went straight to voicemail that night. And every night after. She did not collapse. She did not chase him. That was not who she was. She put on her boots and drove to the mountains and walked until the part of her brain that kept replaying his taillights finally went quiet. She had been doing that every week since. 32 weeks now. The morning of October 14th was a Saturday. She was at the trailhead by 7. 3 other cars in the lot, which was normal for that time of year. Late fall in the Smokies. Cold and clear. She signed the trail register, name, time, intended route, and started up. The man was at the far end of the parking area, sitting on the hood of a dark blue pickup. She noticed him the way you notice something that doesn't quite fit. He was not dressed for the trail. Work boots, not hiking boots. Heavy jacket. No pack. No water bottle visible. Just sitting there watching the treeline. She told herself it was nothing. 20 minutes up the path, she heard footsteps behind her. Not casual footsteps. Deliberate ones. Matching her pace exactly. She stopped to drink from her water bottle. The footsteps stopped. She started walking. They started again. At the first switchback she turned around. The man was 60 yards back. He was looking directly at her. He did not wave. He did not speak. He just stood there on the path watching her. Now here's the thing about Maya. She was not easily frightened. She had worked night shifts in labor and delivery. She had held the hands of women in more pain than most people ever see. She had been calm in rooms where calm was the hardest thing available. But she was also alone on a trail with no cell signal, 8 months pregnant, and a man she had never seen before was tracking her through the trees. She made a decision. She would push up to the upper overlook. Saturdays usually had other hikers up there. She had done that section in 18 minutes before. She thought she could do it in 16 if she pushed. She pushed. He pushed too. The overlook was empty. The weather had changed faster than the forecast predicted. Clouds down low and moving fast. A hard drizzle had started. No other hikers anywhere. She turned. He was 30 yards back now. He had closed the gap while she wasn't watching. She called out, "Hey, what do you want?" He kept walking. No answer. That was enough. She stepped off the marked trail and went left into a stretch of ridge she had never set foot on. The ground dropped steeply, covered in wet leaves. She grabbed at tree branches to stay upright. Behind her she could hear the heavier crunch of his boots on the slope. Not hurrying. Not stopping either. She could not run. Not at 8 months. She could move fast enough to buy time, but she could not outrun anyone. She needed something else. A road. Another hiker. A building. Anything. What she found instead was a narrow gully carved at the base of a rock face. And in the wall at the end of it, a crack. Vertical. Rough-edged. About 14 inches wide at its widest point. She looked at it. She looked back up the slope. The boots were coming down. A man that size could not follow her through that gap. She was almost certain. Almost. She moved to the crack and pushed both hands inside to check the depth. The stone was wet and cold. The gap went back maybe 8 or 10 feet before it curved away into something she could not see. She pressed her cheek against the surface and looked sideways into the dark. The boots hit the gully floor behind her. She went in. She got her right shoulder through first. The rock caught her left shoulder and she twisted, angling her body hard, and pushed it through. Her belly was the hard part. She was carrying the baby out front and wide, the way some women do. She pressed herself flat, exhaled all the way out, and pushed with everything she had. The rock scraped against her belly through her jacket. She felt the baby kick, a hard, startled kick right up under her ribs. She kept pushing. Her hips were next. She turned sideways as far as she could and dragged herself forward with her fingers while her feet pushed from behind. The crack fought her at every point. The stone caught her jacket and tore it. Her left knee hit a jagged edge and split open. She did not stop. She was maybe halfway through when the man reached the crack behind her. She heard him. She felt his hand close around her ankle. "Wait," he said. "Stop, please." She kicked backward as hard as she could. Her heel connected with something solid. His grip loosened. She yanked her leg through and kept moving. The last 3 feet were the tightest. She could feel rock against her back and against her belly at the same time. No room to breathe properly. She took short, shallow pulls of air and clawed herself forward inch by inch until the gap suddenly released her and she stumbled out into open space. She fell to her knees on a flat stone floor. For a moment she couldn't hear anything but her own breathing. Then she heard him on the other side of the rock, pressing against it. His voice came through muffled and broken. "Ma'am, ma'am, please, I need you to listen to me." She scrambled backward, away from the crack, and got to her feet. Her left knee was bleeding through her pants. Her palms were cut in 4 places. She pressed both hands to her belly. The baby kicked again, hard and strong, and she looked around at where she was. Not a tunnel, not a passage, a chamber. The ceiling was maybe 20 feet up. The walls curved inward from all sides. The only light came from a long crack in the ceiling. A thin column of gray daylight, not much but enough to see by. The floor was flat stone, dry in most places. A few small pools where water had pooled and frozen overnight. The space was maybe 30 feet across at its widest. She looked around. She was alone. The man was still calling through the crack behind her. She could not make out words anymore. Just the sound of someone trying to be heard. She walked to the far wall and sat down with her back against the stone. She put both hands on her belly and felt the baby rolling, shifting, doing what they do. She sat in the quiet and let herself breathe. Believe me, she needed that minute. She had just forced herself through a crack in solid rock at 8 months pregnant, while a stranger grabbed at her ankle in the dark. She had earned 30 seconds of stillness. The bleeding on her knee was already slowing. The cuts on her hands were not deep. She checked her jacket, torn at the side, but she was still warm enough. She did a mental inventory. Water bottle half full. A granola bar in her jacket pocket. Her phone, no signal, but the flashlight worked. She turned the flashlight on and swept it slowly around the chamber. That's when she saw the foil. A square of silver emergency blanket, tucked against the far wall and partially under a stone ledge. She had missed it because the ledge threw a shadow. There was a small shape beneath it. She thought at first it was an animal. She held very still. The shape did not move. She crossed the chamber and crouched down. She lifted the corner of the foil. Underneath it was a child. A boy. Small. Thin arms. Dark hair plastered flat against a pale face. Eyes closed. Lips cracked white at the corners. She pressed 2 fingers against his neck. There was a pulse. Slow but there. She put a hand on his shoulder and said, "Hey, hey, open your eyes." One eye opened. Glassy. Unfocused. Then the other. He looked at her for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was a dry rasp that barely made it into the air. "I'm thirsty," he said. She had the water bottle out before he finished the sentence. She told him to drink slow. She watched his color and his pupils while he drank. He was probably 6 or 7 years old, wearing a red jacket and dark pants, both filthy from the ground. His shoes were still on, which was a good sign. It meant he had been conscious enough at some point to keep them on. She asked him his name. He told her. Tyler. She asked how long he had been in here. He thought about it carefully with the seriousness that children bring to big questions. He said he didn't know. A long time. He had been looking for his dog and the ground had dropped out from under him and he had slid down through a hole in the rocks above into this place. He couldn't climb back out. The hole had closed when he fell through. She looked up at the crack in the ceiling. 20 feet up and barely wider than a man's shoulders. No way out for a child who had fallen through. No way back up without rope and equipment. She looked at the crack in the wall. The one she had just come through. She thought about the man on the other side of it. About the way he had said, "Ma'am, please, I need you to listen to me." She sat with Tyler in the gray light while he drank the last of her water, and she thought hard about what came next. Felt quiet. Tyler leaned against her shoulder and his breathing steadied and his eyes drifted closed. He was safe. She was safe. The man outside could not fit through that crack. For the first time since she left the marked trail, she felt something loosen in her chest. She thought it was over. She thought the worst had passed. She was wrong about that. Not in the way she feared, in a different way entirely. Then the voice came again. Clearer this time. It was coming through the ceiling crack, bouncing off the stone in a way that carried the words down into the chamber. Tyler. Tyler Marsh. If anyone in there can hear me, his name is Tyler Marsh. He's 7 years old. He's been missing 3 days. I'm a sheriff's deputy. My name is Roy Calhoun. Please, if anyone can hear me in there, please respond. Maya went very still. She looked at Tyler. His eyes were open. He was staring up at the ceiling like he was listening too. "Tyler," she said quietly, "do you know a man named Roy?" His face changed. Something in it broke open the way kids' faces do when they finally let themselves believe something good might be real. "Deputy Roy," he said. "He comes to school. He gives out stickers." Maya sat with that for a second. Then she moved to the crack in the wall and put her face as close to it as she could. "Deputy Calhoun," she called as loud as she could push her voice. "My name is Maya Reeves. I'm a nurse from Knoxville. I found the boy. He's alive. He's dehydrated, but he's conscious and he's talking." Silence from the other side. Then a sound that she couldn't parse at first. Then the same sound again, louder, and she understood it was a man trying to hold himself together and failing. "Oh my God," he managed. "Oh, thank God." She gave him a moment. Then she said, "Is he hurt?" "Not badly," she said. 3 days without water. He needs to get out and he needs fluids and he needs to be seen. What's your situation out there?" She could hear him pulling himself back together. When he spoke again, his voice had gone professional and clipped. "I've had backup on the radio for 2 hours. There's a full search team working the other side of this ridge. I can redirect them to this position. It's going to take time. Hour. Maybe 90 minutes. Okay," she said. Then, "Tell me why you followed me up the trail this morning." A pause. Longer than she expected. "I was at the trailhead staging area when the search commander said Tyler was last seen in this section of the ridge. I saw you heading up alone, 8 months pregnant, and I wanted to ask if you'd seen a child on the trail. I know how it looked. I should have called out the moment I saw you. I panicked when you left the trail because I was afraid you'd get hurt trying to get away from me. I'm sorry. I'm genuinely sorry. She stayed at the crack. She thought about the work boots, the dark jacket, the way he had watched her from the parking lot hood. She thought about the way he hadn't tried to force himself through the gap. He had called to her, and then he had stayed. Okay, she said. What do I do with the boy until your team gets here? Keep him warm. Keep him talking if he's alert enough. Don't let him sleep if you can avoid it. And ma'am, is there any way through on your side? Any other exit? She had already looked. There wasn't. No, she said. You're going to have to come in from above. She went back to Tyler and wrapped the emergency foil around both of them as well as she could manage. She told him help was coming. She told him he was going to be fine. She told him that his dog was probably sitting in the backyard right now wondering where he went. He made a small sound that was almost a laugh. He does that, Tyler said. Does what? Goes home by himself. Smart dog, she said. He thought about it. Kind of annoying, he said. That surprised a real laugh out of her. The kind that comes up from somewhere genuine. She hadn't laughed like that in a while. She had forgotten what it felt like. If you're still with me on this one, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Stories like this one are exactly what this channel is built for. The next hour in that chamber was one of the quietest of Maya's life. Not peaceful. Quiet the way things go quiet when the worst has passed but the hard part is still ahead. She monitored Tyler's breathing. She kept him wrapped and warm. She checked in with Calhoun through the crack when she needed to, tracking the team's progress, coordinating position. At one point she asked how old Tyler was. 7, Calhoun said through the rock. He has 2 younger sisters. His parents have been at the staging tent for 72 hours straight. She didn't answer that. She just put a hand on Tyler's shoulder and left it there. 55 minutes after first contact, she heard voices from above the ceiling crack. Multiple voices, moving fast. Flashlight beams swept through the gap and crossed the floor of the chamber below. A face appeared at the ceiling, silhouetted against the gray October sky. We've got them, the face said to someone off to the side. Then louder, aimed down into the chamber. Ma'am, we are going to get you both out of there. Maya stood up. Everything in her body objected, her back, her hips, her cut knee, the weight of 8 months of pregnancy. She stood up anyway. Tyler, she said. Time to go. He opened his eyes. He looked up at the light pouring through the crack above him. His face did something completely different from anything it had done since she found him. He smiled. Getting Tyler out came first. That was the right call and Maya made it herself when the team asked who went up first. They lowered a harness through the ceiling gap on a rope. Tyler was small enough to fit through the opening with minimal adjustment, but he was weak and he was scared of heights the way that 7-year-olds are scared of things. Not the measured, rational fear of adults, but the full-body immediate kind. He wrapped both hands around the rope and his knuckles went white. Maya talked him through it from below. She told him to look at her face, not up at the gap. She told him the men above had done this 100 times. She told him his dog was definitely in the backyard right now, completely fine, with absolutely no idea how much trouble he had caused. He laughed at that. A small crack sound. But a real one. They pulled him up slowly and steadily. Maya watched from the chamber floor. She watched his red jacket rise through the light. She watched his small feet clear the gap. She watched the rope go slack. And then she heard it. From above. Outside. On the other side of the rock and the sky and all of it. She heard Tyler make a sound. Not a word. Just a sound. The sound a child makes when the person in the world who loves them most pulls them in and holds on. She sat back down on the stone floor. She had been calm for the last 90 minutes because Tyler needed calm and she was the only person in that chamber to provide it. That's what nurses learn. You feel it later. You feel it in private and you feel it completely and then you get back up. She sat on that cold floor for about 60 seconds and she felt all of it. The fear. The relief. the image of Tyler's shoes disappearing through the crack of light above her. The sound of him on the other side. Then the rope came back down. She got the harness positioned as best she could. A voice from above guided her. Where to put her arms, how to angle her belly, what to hold on to. She followed the instructions exactly. She was also giving instructions back, telling the voice above precisely how she was oriented, what felt stable, what didn't. They worked it together. That was what the training was for on both sides. A woman's voice came from just below the ceiling gap, guiding her hips clear of the edge as she rose. Steady and focused. Maya appreciated that more than she could say. When she cleared the top of the gap and came out into the open air, the cold hit her and the light hit her, and both of them felt like something physical she had to brace against. 6 people were there. Deputies. Search and rescue. 1 paramedic. They had the practiced efficiency of people who had been running on adrenaline for days. When they saw her clear the gap, most of them went still for a moment. Roy Calhoun was there, bigger in the open air than she remembered from the trail. He was red-eyed and not making any effort to hide it. He put a hand on her arm to steady her the moment she was on her feet. "Tyler," she said. "Air ambulance is 10 minutes out," he said. "He's talking." He asked if he was going to be on the news. She laughed. She kept doing that. "Good sign," she said. The paramedic moved in and checked her over with efficient, practiced hands. Cuts on both palms. Left knee lacerated and bruised, but not deeply. Blood pressure elevated, which was expected. The baby was moving. She could feel it. The paramedic put a portable monitor against her belly, listened for 20 seconds, then said the word that mattered. "Strong." They wrapped her in a proper blanket and set her on a flat rock at the edge of the clearing. From there she could see Tyler across the open space. He was sitting wrapped in a thermal sheet with a deputy on each side of him, eating a granola bar someone had produced from nowhere. His hands were moving when he talked. That was a very good sign. That was Tyler being Tyler. The air ambulance came over the ridge. The sound of it filled the whole hillside and pushed everything else out. Tyler looked up at it and his eyes went wide. Not scared, the other thing, the thing that children feel when something enormous and loud comes specifically and only for them. "Is that for me?" he said, loud enough that Maya could hear it from 30 feet away. "That's for you," said the deputy next to him. Tyler nodded, like this was appropriate, like he had expected nothing less. They loaded him onto the stretcher and got him ready. Before the door closed, he looked out across the clearing and found her. She didn't know how. She was wrapped in a blanket at the edge of the group. But he found her. He raised one hand. Not a wave. Just a hand held up, flat and steady, like a small salute. She raised hers back. The door closed. The helicopter lifted. The sound of it moved south over the ridge and faded out, and the clearing went quiet. Roy Calhoun sat down on the rock next to her. 3 days, he said after a while. 200 volunteers. We covered every trail in this section twice. His parents have not slept. Not really. She looked out at the treeline. We would not have found him, he said. The ceiling crack was invisible from above unless you were standing directly on top of it and knew what you were looking for. That chamber doesn't appear on any survey map. He would have. He stopped. He didn't finish the sentence. I wasn't looking for him, Maya said. I was running. I know, he said. I know you were. He looked at his hands. I owe you more than an apology. But I'm starting there. The paramedic came back and said they needed to get her down the mountain. Her blood pressure was still elevated and he wanted the baby monitored more closely. She stood up. Something moved in her belly that felt different from a kick. Longer, tighter, lower. She put both hands on her stomach and looked at the paramedic. He looked at her hands, then at her face. How far apart? He said. I don't know yet, Maya said. But they're starting. They got her down the mountain in 40 minutes. She walked most of it. She was not going to be carried if she could help it. She could help it. Roy Calhoun walked next to her the entire way down, one step behind her shoulder. He didn't talk much. He steadied her arm on the steep sections and kept his mouth shut otherwise and let her set the pace. That was exactly the right call. At the base, the staging tent was still up. 24 people, volunteers, search and rescue personnel, parents of other children still unaccounted for. When the radio crackled and Calhoun said the words, "Found alive, 7 years old, air ambulance en route," the sound that came from inside that tent was something Maya heard from 50 yards away and never quite forgot. The sound of a crowd of people who had been holding their breath for 72 hours and just let it out all at once. A woman came running out of the tent. Then a man right behind her. They had that particular look that parents get after days of not knowing. Like something in their face had been driven all the way to the edge and hadn't found its way back yet. Someone intercepted them and told them Tyler was on his way to the hospital, that he had asked if he was going to be on the news. The woman made a sound that was half laugh and half something that has no name. Maya did not go to them. It wasn't her moment and she knew it. She kept walking toward the ambulance that was waiting at the trailhead. Her contractions were 7 minutes apart by the time she was inside. The paramedic was calm and young and completely competent, and she appreciated all three. She told him exactly what she was feeling with the precision of someone who had spent 2 years watching this from the other side of the bed. Her daughter was born at 4:47 in the afternoon at Knoxville General. 41 weeks exactly, not early it turned out, just on time. 8 pounds, 2 ounces, a full head of dark hair, a voice she used immediately and with full confidence. Maya named her June. She had not planned the name. It came to her the moment they placed the baby on her chest and she felt the weight of her for the first time. June. The name of the kind of day you hope for when the hard months are finally done. Tyler Marsh was discharged from the Children's Hospital 4 days later. Dehydrated and mildly hypothermic, but no lasting injuries. His dog, it turned out, had gone home on its own the very night Tyler disappeared and had been sitting in the backyard the whole time. Tyler was furious about this in the way that 7-year-olds are furious about things. Loudly, briefly, and then completely done with it. 6 weeks after the rescue, a card arrived at St. Mary's Hospital addressed to Maya Reeves, labor and delivery. It was from Tyler. The card had a drawing on the front. A stick figure with a large round belly. Another stick figure, smaller, wearing a red jacket. Both of them inside a shape that might have been a cave or might have just been a circle. The line between those things is fuzzy at age 7. Both figures had large, deliberate smiles. Inside the card, in the careful and unsteady handwriting of a child still making friends with letters, it said, "The lady with the big belly saved me. I think God sent her." His mother had added a note on the inside back cover. She had tried, she wrote, to find words adequate to what she was feeling, and had decided that Tyler had already found the right ones. She wrote that if Maya was ever in their town, there was a meal waiting for her, and that the meal would be there for as long as they both lived. Maya read the card twice. Then she took it home and framed it. She hung it on the wall above June's crib. She still has it there. Now here's what I want you to sit with for a second, because this is where the story means something beyond the rescue. Maya drove to that mountain on October 14th because she needed an hour where she didn't have to think. She had been walked out on by the person who was supposed to stay. She was about to become the only parent a child had ever known. She was doing the only thing she knew to do. She was putting on her boots and walking until the noise in her head went quiet. She did not go to that mountain to be a hero. She went to survive one more week. That's all she was asking for. But survival, sometimes, takes you through a crack you didn't know was there. And on the other side of it, instead of just safety, there is something that changes the meaning of everything that brought you to it. She ran from a man she feared and stumbled into a chamber where a child had been waiting in the dark for 3 days. She forced herself through a gap in solid rock because she had no other choice. And that one desperate physical act led her to exactly the place she needed to be. You don't always get to know why the hard thing happened. You don't always get the card. You don't always get the drawing with the smiling stick figures. But sometimes you do. And sometimes what finds you on the other side of your worst week is the thing that makes clear, in a way that no one could have planned, what you are made of. Not because someone told you, because you already proved it to get there. Maya Reeves proved it on October 14th on a ridge in rural Tennessee. And 4 hours later, so did June.